Princess Zarathek pressed her scaled hands against the cold viewport of her transport ship, watching the blue-green world of Earth grow larger beneath them. Her crimson eyes reflected the swirling clouds of the alien planet, but her expression showed only dread. In 3 days, she would be married to a creature her people considered barely above animals. The Veltar Empire had ruled the galaxy for millennia. Their towering forms, covered in iridescent scales and crowned with sharp bone ridges, commanded respect from every species they encountered. Every species except humans, apparently. These strange bipeds had somehow resisted conquest for decades, forcing the Empire into an uncomfortable stalemate. "Your Highness?" came a deep voice behind her. General Korthax, her military advisor, stepped forward with measured steps. His battle-scarred hide bore the marks of countless victories. "The peace treaty requires this sacrifice. Your marriage will unite our species and end the war." Zarathek's claws scraped against the viewport. Sacrifice indeed. To be bound to one of those soft, weak creatures. She had seen the intelligence reports. Humans were smaller than her people, lacking natural armor or weapons. They lived short lives and seemed to break easily. How had such fragile beings held back the mighty Veltar fleets? The ship shuddered as they entered Earth's atmosphere. Below, vast cities sprawled across continents, their lights twinkling like scattered gems. Despite herself, Zarathek felt a flicker of curiosity. The humans had built all this without the advanced technology her people possessed. They had started with nothing but primitive tools and somehow reached the stars. "The human delegation is already at the landing site," Korthax reported, checking his datapad. "Your intended is among them. Admiral Marcus Chun, they call him. He commanded their defense fleet during the siege of Proxima." That name sent a chill through Zarathek's spine. She remembered the reports from Proxima. 12 Veltar dreadnoughts had surrounded the human colony, demanding surrender. The humans had only 3 ships, ancient, patched vessels that should have been scrap metal. Yet somehow, Admiral Chun had not only escaped the trap, but destroyed 2 dreadnoughts in the process. The Empire had called it luck. They had to, because admitting humans could outfight them was unthinkable. The princess turned from the viewport, her ceremonial robes rustling as she moved. The fabric was woven from the finest materials in the Empire, embedded with precious metals that caught the light like captured starfire. She was beautiful by Veltar standards, tall and elegant, with scales that shifted from deep purple to silver depending on the light. Any Veltar male would consider himself blessed to win her hand, but she was being given to an alien. "A human. Tell me about their customs," she commanded as they prepared for landing. "I must know how to behave around these creatures without appearing weak." Korthax consulted his files. "They are surprisingly diverse. Multiple skin colors, various belief systems, different languages. Unlike our unified culture, they seem to thrive on differences. Their greeting involves pressing palms together or grasping hands. They show emotion openly, which they consider strength rather than weakness." The ship touched down with barely a tremor. Through the viewing screens, Zarathek could see the human delegation waiting on the landing platform. They stood in formation, wearing what appeared to be formal military dress. Most were shorter than even the smallest Veltar, their skin tones ranging from pale pink to deep brown. They looked so fragile in the alien sunlight that one figure stood apart from the others. He was tall for a human, with graying hair and steady eyes that seemed to take in everything around him. Even at a distance, there was something about his bearing that commanded attention. This had to be Admiral Chun, her future husband. As the ship's ramp lowered, Zarathek felt her breathing quicken. Years of training in diplomacy and warfare had prepared her for many things, but not for this. She was about to meet the enemy she would call husband, the alien who would share her bed and perhaps father her children. The thought made her scales ripple with revulsion. The human delegation stepped forward as she emerged from the ship. Their movements were swift and precise, lacking the measured grace of her people but possessing an efficiency that was oddly compelling. Admiral Chen walked at their head, his eyes meeting hers without flinching. Most species looked away when facing a Veltar royal. Humans apparently did not. "Your Highness?" he said, his voice carrying easily across the platform. He spoke in perfect Veltar, though with a slight accent that made the formal words sound almost musical. "Welcome to Earth, I am Marcus Chun." He didn't bow. Veltar protocol demanded that lesser species bow before royalty, but the Admiral simply stood straight and met her gaze. For a moment, Zarathak didn't know how to respond. Was this ignorance of proper protocol or deliberate disrespect? Then she noticed something that made her pause. The human stance wasn't casual or disrespectful. It was the posture of a warrior acknowledging an equal. He wasn't bowing because he considered her a peer, not a superior to grovel before. The realization was both insulting and oddly intriguing. "Admiral," she replied carefully, "I hope this union will bring peace to both our peoples." The formal words felt hollow in her mouth, but diplomacy demanded them. "As do I," he said simply. "Would you like to see your quarters? The ceremony is in 3 days, but I thought you might want to rest and perhaps tour our world before then." His consideration surprised her. Most political marriages involved little more than signing documents and performing rituals. The idea that he might actually care about her comfort was unexpected. She nodded regally, not trusting herself to speak without revealing her confusion as they walked toward the transport vehicles. Zarathak found herself stealing glances at the man who would soon be her husband. He moved with confidence but without arrogance, speaking quietly with his staff while keeping pace with her longer strides. Whatever she had expected from humanity's greatest military leader, it wasn't this calm, respectful figure walking beside her. Perhaps the next 3 days would reveal more about these strange creatures she was bound to join her life with. Whether that revelation would ease her fears or confirm them remained to be seen. The human city sprawled endlessly in all directions, a maze of towers and streets that seemed to pulse with constant activity. Princess Zarathak sat in the transport vehicle, watching through tinted windows as thousands of humans went about their daily lives. Children played in parks while their parents worked in countless buildings. Elderly humans sat on benches, watching the world go by. The sheer diversity was overwhelming. "Your people never stop moving," she observed to Admiral Chun, who sat across from her in the spacious vehicle. The transport had been modified to accommodate her larger frame, another small courtesy that surprised her. "We're a restless species," he agreed with what she was learning to recognize as a human smile. "We've been exploring and building since we first learned to walk upright. Sometimes that gets us into trouble, but it's also how we've survived challenges that might have destroyed other civilizations." Zarathak studied his face as he spoke. Humans expressed emotion so freely, their features shifting to match their thoughts. It was alien to her, yet oddly fascinating. Veltar kept their feelings carefully controlled, showing strength through stoic composure. This human seemed strong, despite wearing his thoughts openly. Their first stop was a memorial park in the center of the city. Towering walls of black stone rose from carefully tended gardens, covered with millions of names etched in flowing script. Humans moved quietly among the monuments, some leaving flowers, others simply standing in respectful silence. "This honors those who died in our conflicts," Admiral Chun explained as they walked among the memorials. "Not just our people, but all who fell in war, including your soldiers." Zarathak stopped walking. There, carved into the same stone as human names, were Veltar inscriptions. The flowing curves of her people's writing looked strange beside human letters, but they had been rendered with careful precision. She recognized some of the names warriors who had died fighting against Earth's fleets. "You honor your enemies?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We honor courage wherever we find it," the Admiral replied. "Those Veltar fought for their beliefs, just as our people fought for ours. Death in battle deserves respect, regardless of which side you served." The princess had never seen anything like it. In Veltar culture, defeated enemies were forgotten, their names erased from history. Victory belonged to the strong, and the weak deserved no memory. Yet here were humans, celebrating the bravery of those who had tried to kill them. It made no tactical sense, but somehow it felt right in a way she couldn't explain. They continued through the city, visiting museums, markets, and schools everywhere. Humans stopped to stare at her towering form and iridescent scales. But their expressions weren't fearful or hostile. They looked curious, even excited to see her. Children waved from behind their parents, and some adults smiled and nodded politely. A few even attempted clumsy bows in what they probably thought was proper Veltar etiquette. "They're not afraid of me," Zarathak said as they toured a research facility where human scientists worked alongside alien colleagues from a dozen different species. "Should they be?" Admiral Chun asked. "You're here for peace, not conquest." Most humans understand the difference. That evening they dined at the Admiral's residence, a modest home overlooking the ocean. Zarathak had expected a palace befitting a military leader, but the house was comfortable rather than grand. Books lined the walls, and she noticed pictures of the Admiral with various people family. She assumed, though humans all looked somewhat similar to her still adjusting eyes. "You don't live like a conqueror," she observed as they ate. The meal was simple but well prepared, with dishes adapted to accommodate her dietary needs. "I'm not a conqueror," he replied. "I'm a protector." "There's a difference, though. Sometimes the methods look similar." During dinner he told her about human history. Wars that had nearly destroyed their species, followed by periods of unprecedented cooperation. Scientific breakthroughs born from necessity. Art and music created in the darkest times to preserve hope. The humans had faced extinction multiple times, yet here they were, reaching for the stars. "We're not the strongest species in the galaxy," Admiral Shen said as they sat on the terrace afterward, watching Earth's moon rise over the water. "We're not the fastest, or the smartest, or the most technologically advanced. But we're adaptable. When we can't break through a wall, we find a way around it. When we can't overpower an enemy, we outlast them. When we can't win through strength, we win through endurance." Zarathak listened to the sound of waves breaking against the shore far below. On her homeworld, the seas were purple and still, reflecting the 3 moons in perfect silence. This ocean was alive, constantly moving, never the same from one moment to the next. Like the humans themselves. "Your empire," the Admiral continued carefully, "rules through strength and fear. That works for a while, but it's not sustainable. People obey because they have to, not because they want to. Eventually, someone stronger comes along, or the fear breaks down and the empire crumbles. And humans are different?" she asked, though she thought she was beginning to understand. "We try to be. We've made plenty of mistakes, conquered and been conquered, built empires and watched them fall. But we learned that lasting peace comes from cooperation, not domination. That's why we're willing to make this marriage alliance. Not because we fear you, but because we believe we're stronger together than apart." The princess looked at this human who would soon be her husband. He spoke of strength through cooperation, of honoring fallen enemies, of adaptation over force. Everything about his people contradicted what she had been taught about proper civilization. Yet his words carried the weight of truth, backed by the evidence she had seen throughout the day. "Your people confuse me," she admitted. "You should have surrendered years ago. Your ships were outnumbered, your technology inferior. Any rational species would have accepted defeat." Admiral Chun smiled that human expression again. Rationality is overrated sometimes. "We have something that numbers and technology can't easily overcome." "What's that?" "Hope. The belief that tomorrow can be better than today, that fighting for what's right is worth the cost. Your people fight for glory and conquest. Those are fine motivators, but they're external things. Hope comes from within. It's harder to kill than a soldier, harder to defeat than a fleet." As they sat in comfortable silence, watching stars appear in the darkening sky, Zarathak found herself reconsidering everything she thought she knew about humanity. Perhaps these creatures were more than the primitive animals her people believed them to be. Perhaps there was something to learn from their strange ways. The attack came without warning on the second day of Princess Zarathak's visit to Earth. She was touring a human agricultural facility with Admiral Chen when the emergency alarms began screaming across the complex. The Admiral's communication device crackled to life with urgent reports from space traffic control. Unknown vessels have emerged from hyperspace in the outer system, the voice reported. Configuration matches Kethmori raiders. They're moving toward the inner planets at high speed. Zarethek felt her blood turn cold. The Kethmori were nightmare creatures from the Galactic Rim, insectoid beings that cared nothing for diplomacy or civilization. They existed only to consume and destroy, treating other species as nothing more than food sources. If they had found Earth, both humans and Veltar were in mortal danger. How many ships? Admiral Chun asked, his demeanor shifting instantly from diplomatic host to military commander. 12 capital vessels, Admiral. Multiple fighter swarms. Our deep space sensors estimate their arrival time at 6 hours. The Admiral turned to Zarethek, his expression grim. Princess, I need to ask you to remain in the secure bunker complex while we deal with this threat. Your safety is my responsibility. Absolutely not, she replied firmly. This is exactly the kind of threat our peoples should face together. My ship carries advanced weapons that could turn the battle. Your Highness, Admiral Chun said carefully. I appreciate the offer, but this isn't your fight. Zarethek drew herself up to her full height, scales shifting to deep crimson with anger. The Kethmori killed my younger brother during a raid on our frontier colonies. They consumed him alive while he tried to protect civilian evacuees. This is very much my fight. The ride to the orbital command center was tense with preparation. Admiral Chun coordinated Earth's defenses through his communication device while Zarethek contacted General Korthax aboard her vessel. The Veltar ship was powerful, armed with plasma cannons and protected by energy shields that could withstand tremendous punishment. But one ship against 12 was poor odds. Even for superior technology, Earth's defense fleet was already mobilizing as they reached the command center. Zarethek counted only 8 human capital ships, supported by perhaps 30 smaller vessels. Against the Kethmori swarm, it seemed woefully inadequate. She had read the intelligence reports about these raiders. They fought with suicidal fury, caring nothing for losses as long as they could close to boarding range. Admiral, reported the tactical officer as they entered the command center, the Kethmori fleet will reach engagement range in 4 hours. Should we begin civilian evacuations? No, Admiral Chun replied without hesitation. We hold the line here. Order all ships to battle stations and prepare for immediate departure. Get me a direct channel to Princess Zarethek's vessel. General Korthax appeared on the main display screen, his scarred features grave. Admiral Chun, our sensors show the approaching fleet. We are prepared to fight alongside your forces. Can your ship's weapons penetrate Kethmori armor? The Admiral asked. Yes, but their ships are fast and numerous. We'll need to coordinate our targeting to maximize effectiveness. For the next 3 hours, Zarethek watched as Admiral Chun orchestrated the combined defense. He spoke with ship captains, adjusted formation patterns, and coordinated supply runs with the efficiency of someone who had done this countless times. But what impressed her most was how he listened to suggestions from junior officers, incorporating their ideas into the overall strategy. Lieutenant Santos, he said to a young human woman at the sensor station, you mentioned the asteroid field near the 4th planet. Could we use that as a defensive position? Yes, sir, the officer replied, her voice gaining confidence. The rocks would break up their formation and give us cover for hit-and-run attacks. Force them to come at us piecemeal instead of all at once. Brilliant. Helm, lay in a course for the asteroid field. Signal all ships to follow. This was leadership unlike anything Zarethek had seen in the Veltar military. Her people commanded through dominance and intimidation. Orders flowed downward from superior to subordinate without question or discussion. But Admiral Chun led by inspiring others to give their best ideas and efforts. Even she found herself offering tactical suggestions, which he incorporated into the battle plan without hesitation. The combined fleet reached the asteroid field just as the Kethmori raiders dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. The enemy ships were grotesque things, covered in chitinous armor and bristling with organic weapons. They moved with insectoid, twitching motions, clustering together like a disturbed hive before spreading out to attack. Here they come, Admiral Chun said quietly. All ships weapons free. Remember the plan: hit hard, break contact, reposition. Don't let them swarm you. The battle began with long-range missile exchanges as both fleets approached each other. Kethmori vessels absorbed terrible punishment but kept coming, their bioengineered hulls regenerating damage almost as quickly as it was inflicted. The human ships danced between asteroids, using the rocky debris as shields while striking at exposed enemies. Zarathek's ship, the Imperial's Pride, anchored the defensive line with devastating firepower. Her plasma cannons carved through Kethmori armor like heated blades through flesh, destroying 2 enemy vessels in the opening minutes. But the raiders kept coming, accepting horrific losses to close the distance. "Admiral," called the communications officer, "the Brisbane reports severe damage to their main drive. They're falling behind the formation." Through the main viewer, Zaretha could see the human cruiser struggling to keep pace with the rest of the fleet. Smoke poured from its engine sections, and its weapons fire had slowed to sporadic bursts. 3 Kethmori ships had broken from the main group and were moving to surround the crippled vessel. "This is Admiral Chun to all ships," came the voice over the communication system. "Brisbane is in trouble. I'm taking the Washington to assist." "Sir," protested the tactical officer, "that will leave a gap in our formation." "Sometimes you have to take risks to protect your people," the admiral replied. "Execute the maneuver." Zarathek watched as the admiral's flagship broke formation and raced toward the endangered cruiser. The Washington was heavily armed but not designed for close combat against multiple enemies. It would be a desperate fight with uncertain odds. "General Korthax," she commanded, "take us to support the admiral's ship." "Maximum speed." "Your Highness," the general protested, "that will expose us to concentrated enemy fire." "Do it," she ordered, her voice carrying the authority of royal blood. "These humans fight to protect their own. We will do the same." The Imperial's Pride surged forward, its powerful engines pushing the massive vessel through the asteroid field at dangerous speeds. Behind them, the rest of the human fleet continued the main battle. But Zarathek's attention was focused entirely on the small drama playing out ahead of them. The admiral's flagship reached the Brisbane just as the Kethmori closed in for the kill. The Washington arrived at the Brisbane's position just as the first Kethmori raider began its boarding approach. The insectoid vessel latched onto the human cruiser's hull with organic grappling claws, preparing to breach the armor and pour warriors into the ship's corridors. Admiral Chun's flagship opened fire immediately, plasma bolts tearing chunks from the alien's carapace. But 2 more raiders were closing fast. "Brisbane, this is Admiral Chun," came the voice over the communication channel. "Can you break free from that grappler?" "Negative, sir," replied the Brisbane's captain, her voice tight with strain. "They've breached our main reactor containment. If we try to pull away, the whole ship goes up." Princess Zarathek gripped the armrests of her command chair as the Imperial's Pride raced through the asteroid field. Her ship was still 2 minutes away from the battle, and she could see the situation deteriorating rapidly. The second Kethmori vessel had attached itself to the Brisbane's starboard side, while the third was moving to attack the Washington directly. "Your Highness," General Korthax reported from the weapons station, "we're in extreme range. I could attempt a precision shot at the grappler connections." "Too risky," Zarathek replied. "If we miss, we'll hit the Brisbane. Get us closer." On the main screen, she watched as Admiral Chun made a decision that defied all military logic. Instead of maintaining safe distance and providing fire support, the Washington moved in close to the Brisbane and used its own hull to ram the second Kethmori raider. The impact sent both ships spinning, but it freed the cruiser from the alien's grasp. The admiral was fighting like a Veltar warrior, using his own ship as a weapon to protect his people. But humans weren't built for such tactics. Their vessels lacked the heavy armor and redundant systems that would let them survive ramming attacks. Even as Zarathek watched, she could see hull breaches opening along the Washington's port side. "All fighters," Admiral Chun's voice came through the communications array. "Focus fire on the remaining grappler. Brisbane, prepare for emergency jump to minimum safe distance. The human fighter craft swarmed around the still-attached Kethmori vessel, the smaller weapons chipping away at the organic connections holding it to the Brisbane's hull. But the raiders had evolved to resist such attacks. Their living ships could absorb tremendous punishment and keep functioning. That's when Princess Zarathuk saw her opportunity. "General, target the junction point between the raider and the Brisbane," she commanded. "Plasma lance, minimum dispersal, maximum penetration." "That's an extremely difficult shot, Your Highness. 1 degree off target and we'll hit the human ship." "I'm aware of the risks." "Fire when ready." The Imperial's Pride had finally closed to effective range. On the targeting display, Zarathak could see the delicate intersection where the Kethmori vessel's boarding claws penetrated the Brisbane's hull. It was a shot that required absolute precision, the kind of marksmanship that separated elite gunners from merely competent ones. The plasma lance fired in a brilliant, purple beam that crossed the space between ships in microseconds. The energy struck exactly at the connection point, vaporizing the organic grappling mechanisms and cauterizing the breach in one precise stroke. The Kethmori raider tumbled away from the Brisbane, trailing atmospheric gases and biological fluids. "Brisbane is free," came the jubilant call from the human cruiser. "Engines coming online now." But the battle was far from over. The third Kethmori vessel, larger than the others, had closed with the damaged Washington. Instead of grappling, this one was using some kind of directed energy weapon that ate through the human ship's armor like acid. Admiral Cheon's flagship was dying by inches, its return fire becoming sporadic as systems failed. "Your Highness," General Korthax said urgently, "we should withdraw. Our primary mission is to protect you, not—" "Our mission," Zarathak interrupted, "is to forge an alliance with humanity? That alliance means nothing if we abandon them in their moment of need." Attack pattern Veltar 7, full power to forward shields. The Imperial's Pride charged directly at the Kethmori capital ship, all weapons blazing. The raider turned to meet this new threat, its bioenergy weapon switching targets to the approaching Veltar vessel. Where the alien energy touched her ship's shields, they flared and sparked but held firm. Veltar defensive technology was generations ahead of human systems. As they closed the distance, Zarathak could see details of the enemy vessel through the main viewer. The thing was massive, easily twice the size of her ship, its hull covered in sensor organs and weapon clusters that twitched and moved like living tissue. Somewhere inside that nightmare, she knew, were hundreds of Kethmori warriors waiting to pour into any ship they could breach. "Close to ramming distance," she ordered. "Your Highness," General Korthax protested. "At this range, their boarding parties will never reach us," Zarathak finished. "Because we're not boarding them. We're going to do something they won't expect." The two ships were almost touching now, so close that the Kethmori vessel filled the entire forward viewer. Its organic weapons had stopped firing, unable to target something so near. The alien ship began extending grappling claws, preparing to latch on and begin boarding operations. "Now," Zarathak commanded quietly, the Imperials. Pride fired every weapon it carried directly into the Kethmori ship's hull at point-blank range. Plasma cannons, missile launchers, particle beams, and energy torpedoes all discharged simultaneously. At such close range, even the raiders' regenerating armor couldn't absorb the assault. The alien vessel came apart in seconds, its organic components vaporizing under the incredible energy release. The explosion hurled both the Imperial's Pride and the Washington away from the destruction site. Zarathak felt her ship shudder under the impact, but the Veltar shields held. Emergency klaxons wailed throughout the vessel as damage control teams rushed to repair overloaded. "Systems, status report," she called, out as the bridge crew worked to restore full functionality. "Minor damage to secondary systems," General Korthax reported, his voice filled with professional respect. "That was expertly executed, Your Highness." On the main screen, she could see the rest of the battle winding down. The remaining Kethmori vessels, apparently discouraged by the loss of their largest ship, were withdrawing toward the system's edge. The combined human-Veltar fleet had suffered damage but remained intact. Most importantly, they had protected Earth and all its billions of inhabitants. "Princess," Admiral Chun's voice came through the communication system. "That was some of the finest shooting I've ever witnessed. You saved my ship and my crew." "We saved each other, Admiral," she replied. "That's what allies do." As the Imperial's pride moved to rejoin the fleet formation, Zarathak found herself looking at the human vessels with new eyes. She had seen their courage under fire, their willingness to sacrifice for each other, and their ability to work with former enemies when faced with a common threat. These weren't the weak primitives her people believed them to be. They were something far more dangerous and admirable. They were warriors who fought not for conquest, but for each other. The realization changed everything about her upcoming marriage. This wasn't a diplomatic sacrifice anymore. It was the foundation of something genuinely meaningful. The wedding ceremony took place under Earth's open sky, something that would have been unthinkable on any Veltar world. Princess Zarathak's people preferred enclosed spaces where every variable could be controlled, but humans seemed to thrive on uncertainty and natural beauty. The garden venue overlooked the ocean, with flowering trees providing shade and alien birds singing in the branches above. Representatives from dozens of species had gathered to witness the historic union. Veltar nobles stood alongside human diplomats, their towering forms creating an impressive backdrop for the proceedings. But Zarathak's attention was focused entirely on Admiral Chun, who waited for her at the altar wearing formal dress uniform adorned with medals from conflicts she now understood had shaped both their peoples. The past 3 days had transformed her understanding of everything. The battle against the Kethmori raiders had shown her human courage in action, but the aftermath had revealed something even more profound. Instead of claiming victory or demanding rewards, Admiral Chen had spent hours visiting wounded crew members in the medical bay. He knew their names, their families, their hopes beyond military service. This wasn't the cold professionalism she expected from a commanding officer, but genuine care for those under his protection. "You look nervous," said Sarah Martinez, the human woman who had volunteered to serve as her cultural advisor. Sarah was Admiral Chun's aide, a young officer with kind eyes and seemingly endless patience for Zarathak's questions about human customs. "I am," Zarathak admitted quietly. 3 days ago, I thought I was sacrificing myself for peace. Now I'm not sure what I'm doing." "You're taking a leap of faith," Sarah replied with that human expression of warmth they called a smile. "Marcus Admiral Chun, he's nervous too. He told me this morning that he hopes he can be worthy of your trust." The ceremony began with traditional music from both cultures, creating an otherworldly harmony that seemed to represent the union itself. Veltar throat singing provided a deep, resonant foundation while human instruments added melody and rhythm above it. The combination should have clashed horribly, but somehow it worked, each tradition strengthening the other. When Zarathak began her walk down the aisle, she felt every eye upon her. Her wedding dress was a masterwork of both cultures, with Veltar's ceremonial armor adapted into an elegant gown that caught the sunlight like captured fire. Human seamstresses had worked with Veltar artisans to create something that honored both traditions while being uniquely beautiful. Admiral Chun stood waiting with calm dignity, his expression serious but not grim. When their eyes met, she saw no fear, no reluctance, no calculation. Instead, she saw respect and something that might have been the beginning of genuine affection. He offered his hand as she approached. A human gesture she had learned meant partnership rather than submission. The ceremony itself was surprisingly moving. They exchanged vows in both languages, promising to stand together against all challenges and to build something greater than either could achieve alone. When Admiral Chun spoke his vows in perfect Veltar, his accent making the ancient words sound like poetry, Zarathak felt something shift inside her chest. This wasn't duty anymore. This was hope. "I take you as my partner," he said in her language, "not because our peoples demand it, but because I believe we can create something worthy of the sacrifices that brought us together. I promise to honor your strength, learn from your wisdom, and stand beside you whatever comes." When her time came to respond, Zarathek found herself speaking words she hadn't planned, emotions overriding careful preparation. "I take you as my partner," she said in accented English, "because you have shown me that strength comes in many forms. Your people taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. I promise to be worthy of that lesson and to help build the peace our children will inherit." The moment they were pronounced married, cheers erupted from the assembled crowd. Humans applauded while Veltar performed their traditional chest-thumping salute. The sound was chaotic but joyful, representing the messy but vital process of two cultures learning to celebrate together. The reception that followed was unlike anything in either of their traditions. Humans and Veltar mingled freely, sharing food and stories despite language barriers and physical differences. Children from both species played together under the careful supervision of their parents, creating improvised games that transcended species boundaries. Admiral Chunmarcus, she reminded herself, proved to be an attentive husband even in the midst of diplomatic obligations. He made sure she was comfortable, introduced her to important guests, and explained cultural references when conversations became confusing. More importantly, he included her in discussions about the future of human-Veltar relations, treating her as a partner rather than a symbol. "The real work starts now," he said during a quiet moment as they watched delegates from various species, sampling the fusion cuisine their chefs had created. "Building a real alliance will take years of patient effort, but it can be done," Zarathek replied, surprising herself with the confidence in her voice. "Your people and mine complement each other well. We have the technology and military strength. You have the adaptability and diplomatic skills. Together we could create something remarkable." Late in the evening, as the celebration continued around them, Marcus showed her something that would remain in her memory forever. A group of young humans had set up musical instruments near the garden's edge, playing songs that seemed to capture the joy and hope of the day. Veltar youth, initially hesitant, had joined them using traditional instruments from their own culture. The music that emerged was chaotic at first, each group playing in their own style without regard for the others. But gradually, as the young musicians listened to each other and adapted their techniques, something beautiful began to emerge. The human melodies found harmony with Veltar rhythms, creating compositions that belonged entirely to neither culture but somehow represented both. "That's our future," Marcus said softly, his hand finding hers as they listened. "Not human, not Veltar, but something new that honors both traditions while creating its own identity." Zarathek watched children from two species dancing together to music that had never existed before that moment, and felt hope bloom in her chest like the flowering trees around them. The war was over, but more than that, they were building something that could last. Her marriage wasn't a sacrifice anymore. It was the foundation stone of a new kind of civilization. As the evening progressed, she found herself looking forward to tomorrow instead of dreading it. There would be challenges ahead, misunderstandings to overcome, prejudices to break down on both sides. But they would face those obstacles together, and that made all the difference. The frightened princes who had arrived on Earth 3 days earlier no longer existed. In her place stood a woman ready to help build a bridge between worlds, supported by a partner who had already proven himself worthy of her trust and respect. 5 years after the wedding, Princess Zarathek Chun stood on the observation deck of the joint research station orbiting the binary stars of Kepler 442. The facility represented everything the Human-Veltar Alliance had achieved. A fusion of technologies that neither species could have developed alone, staffed by scientists from both worlds working toward common goals. Through the massive viewport, she could see the construction scaffolding of the first truly integrated colony ship, designed to carry both humans and Veltar to distant worlds where they would build new settlements together. The vessel was enormous, larger than any ship either species had built independently, equipped with human adaptability systems and Veltar defensive technology. "The engines are running at 97% efficiency," reported Dr. Jennifer Harrison, the human chief engineer whose team had spent 3 years solving the power distribution challenges. "Your people's plasma containment technology made this possible, Princess." "Our people?" Zarathuk corrected gently. Human innovation made the power coupling stable enough to work reliably. This is what we can accomplish when we combine our strengths. The correction had become automatic over the years. She had learned that building true unity required constant small choices to think in terms of us, rather than them. It was harder than she had expected, requiring vigilance against instincts shaped by millennia of species isolation. Marcus emerged from the command center, his hair now more gray than brown, but his step still confident. 5 years of marriage had deepened their partnership into something that went beyond political necessity. They had learned to rely on each other's strengths, to trust each other's judgment, and to present a united front when challenges arose. The Galactic Council has approved our exploration proposal, he announced with satisfaction. We're cleared to establish colonies in the Andromeda Gateway cluster. 20 worlds, all suitable for terraforming with joint human-Veltar technology. Zarathuk felt a surge of pride. The proposal had been controversial, with several council species arguing that the alliance was too new and untested to be trusted with such ambitious expansion. But the success of their research stations and trade partnerships had proven that humans and Veltar could work together effectively. How did the vote go? Asked Commander Velkoth, the Veltar military liaison whose scales had shifted to pleased blue-green. He had been skeptical of the alliance initially, but had become one of its strongest advocates after seeing what they could achieve together. 12 in favor. 3 opposed, 2 abstentions, Marcus replied. Even the hegemony voted for us, though they made it clear they're watching closely for any signs of imperial ambition. The accusation of imperialism was one they had faced repeatedly. Several galactic powers worried that the Human-Veltar alliance was simply a new form of conquest, combining Veltar military might with human cunning to dominate other species. They had worked hard to prove otherwise, always including other species in their projects and sharing technological advances freely. Speaking of watching closely, Zarathuk said with amusement, the children are back from their school trip to the Earth colonies. They'll want to hear about the approval. The children, perhaps the greatest symbol of what their alliance had achieved. Not just the offspring of mixed marriages like theirs, but the generation growing up seeing human-Veltar cooperation as normal rather than revolutionary. Young humans who spoke Veltar as fluently as English. Young Veltar who had absorbed human adaptability and optimism, along with their traditional strength and discipline. They found the children in the station's educational section, where a mixed group of young humans and Veltar were working together on a project to design atmospheric processors for the new colonies. The sight still amazed Zarathuk, sometimes beings who should have been natural enemies, collaborating as if species barriers didn't exist. Princess Zarathuk, called out Tommy Wu, a 12-year-old human boy whose enthusiasm for xenobiology had made him something of a celebrity among the Veltar students. Look what we figured out! The children had developed a solution to one of the terraforming challenges that had stumped adult engineers for months. By combining human atmospheric manipulation techniques with Veltar biological adaptation systems, they had created a process that could make worlds habitable in half the usual time. That's remarkable work, Zarathuk said, examining their designs with genuine admiration. Have you considered presenting this to the Engineering Council? The adults never listen to kids, grumbled Sektar, a young Veltar whose scales showed patterns of frustrated orange. They think we don't understand the complexities. Then we'll make sure they listen, Marcus said firmly. Good ideas don't have age requirements. I'll arrange for you to present your proposal at next week's council meeting. That evening, as the station settled into its night cycle, Zarathuk and Marcus sat in their quarters reviewing reports from various alliance projects. Trade agreements were flourishing. Joint military exercises had proven the effectiveness of combined tactics, and cultural exchange programs were breaking down prejudices on both sides. Do you ever regret it? Marcus asked quietly. Giving up your position in the Empire for this? Zarathuk considered the question seriously. She had indeed given up much the automatic respect of her birth rank, the certainty of Veltar cultural norms, the simplicity of seeing the universe in terms of superior and inferior species. But what she had gained seemed infinitely more valuable. "I regret nothing," she said finally. "The empire I was born into was strong but static, powerful but isolated. What we're building here has the potential to grow beyond anything either of our species could achieve alone." She gestured toward the viewport where the colony ship hung silhouetted against the binary stars. "That vessel will carry families from both our worlds to new colonies, where their children will grow up as citizens of something larger than either humanity or the Veltar Empire. They'll face challenges we can't imagine and develop solutions we never dreamed of." Marcus followed her gaze. "The Kethmori attack changed everything, didn't it? Seeing our people fight together against a common enemy, it showed us what we could be," Zarathek agreed. "But building lasting peace required something more than shared victory. It required daily choices to trust each other, to compromise when we disagreed, to put the alliance above individual interests." They had learned that lesson through countless small conflicts and misunderstandings. Trade disputes that required careful negotiation, cultural practices that offended the other species, military protocols that needed constant adjustment. Every challenge had been an opportunity to either strengthen their bond or let old prejudices resurface. "The next generation won't have our baggage," Marcus observed. "They're growing up seeing cooperation as natural, which means they'll take our achievements for granted," Zarathek replied with amusement. "They'll push further, demand more, probably think we were too cautious in our approach." "Good," Marcus said firmly. "That's exactly what should happen. Each generation should surpass their parents' accomplishments." A communication alert interrupted their conversation. The message was from the Andromeda Gateway, where the advanced survey teams had been exploring potential colony worlds. The lead scientist appeared on their display screen, her expression excited despite the static that marked the extreme range transmission. "Princess." "Admiral," she said, using their formal titles for the official record. "We've found something extraordinary. The fourth planet in the Kepler 442 system shows signs of ancient terraforming. Whoever lived here before left behind technology that could revolutionize our colonization efforts. The discovery would change everything again." Ancient alien technology always brought opportunities and dangers in equal measure. But Zarathek felt only excitement as she looked at her husband and partner. They had faced the unknown together before and emerged stronger. Whatever challenges lay ahead in distant Andromeda, they would meet them as they had met everything else. Together, the alliance that had begun with fear and duty had become something neither of them had dared to hope for. A true partnership that was creating a new kind of civilization among the stars. The frightened princess and the duty-bound admiral had become architects of humanity's and the Veltar's shared future, proving that sometimes the most unlikely unions create the most extraordinary possibilities.